Hey guys, SGT here, and I'm really excited because today we get a twofer. Not only do we get ranting Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin, we get his cohort, Bill Holter, a new contributor over at Miles Franklin. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Let's get started, gentlemen. I have a lot to ask you about. And Andy, why don't we start with you? You've been warning recently that, quote, priceless precious metals or worthless dollars, your choice. And I concur, because the day will eventually come when your ability to stack physical cheaply, the end of these cartel price manipulations, and therefore, in my opinion, price subsidies, will end, correct?
Right. Well, as for your question about priceless precious metals against worthless dollars, I think that's probably is the answer that I give to the most uninformed questions of anything that's asked me. So for instance, what if gold is confiscated? I can't go to the grocery store and buy things with gold, etc. People are not realizing that in any of the situations that they're contemplating, the only reason that for instance, the government would even consider confiscation of gold would mean you already had a dollar crashing and gold soaring to the point where, you would take your chances with something that's priceless rather than holding the dollars that are worthless. So, everyone should realize that this is not, once you realize that gold is money and not an investment, then this is a very natural thing to understand. If anything, the reasons to own gold now are, in my view, vastly higher than they were 10 years ago. And actually, that's a simple mathematical formula. All you have to do is look at what the published money supply is now compared to what it was in 2000. And obviously the U.S. claims it has the same amount of gold, even though we know it has a lot less, to show that mathematically the upside for gold in today's dollars is a lot higher than it was then. Look, what it comes down to is the system has been rapidly collapsing here and in Europe and frankly everywhere. I saw Japan today dropped its 0.1% floor on interest rates. And as a result, the cartel and the powers that be have been fighting back harder than ever, starting in September once we hit the all-time high, and of course after the leap day violation in February when all their efforts from last fall looked like they weren't work. So, it's right now it's a frustrating time for people in the sector. But if you own the physical stuff, you sit there with your coins and you just wait. It'll come.
Let's circle back to Bill's latest. Bill, your latest article is titled, How Close Are We to a New Great Depression? Now, with 45 million Americans on food stamps and outsourcing in the name of globalization gutting major American cities like Detroit, etc., millions of citizens in this country right now, Bill, are already deeply mired in the despair of depression, aren't they?
Yeah, the system as a whole. If the economic numbers, the financial numbers, if everything was reported as it really is, for instance, if they calculated the unemployment numbers today the way they did 20, 30 years ago, we'd have, 17, 18, 20% unemployment. That's a depression. And in the piece I wrote, had the government not been running a 10% of GDP deficit year after year, GDP would be running 10% lower than what it's been running. So if they reported, say 2% growth last year, without the deficit, that number is really -8. So if the federal government does not run a 10% deficit, which they can't do forever, this is going to come to a head really quickly, as the Federal Reserve is now buying up 70% of all Treasury paper because foreigners have backed away. But if this 10% deficit that we've been running gets sucked out of GDP, you immediately have a 10% drop in the economy. And anything 8, 9, 10% or more contraction in an economy, that is a depression. So you go back to 2008, 2009, and the reported numbers were down 4, 5, 6%. Then suck another 10% out of that, and you're at 14, 15, 16% negative growth. That's a depression. We haven't dug our way out, and I think, as Sinclair said, basically all we've done is bounce along the bottom.
Right, and the secular trend is that the debt is now too high for anyone to afford anything, and now you hear this term pretty much every day now, this fiscal cliff, which means that there has to be a cut in spending. You could print more money to accommodate spending just to, maintain these horrible levels Bill's talking about, but the fact is that's just going to create more inflation. So if there's even any attempt to stop the fiscal cliff, which is, I don't think it's possible, but they could attempt it. It's just going to make what Bill's talking about that much worse and that much quicker. And social unrest will come right after it.
Yeah, and we're seeing social unrest all over the globe already. I want to bridge over to an article that I posted at SGT Report. We've been talking a very, very long time about the blatant, massive criminality of GLD ETF custodian HSBC. And this latest news is that HSBC is specifically in trouble for drug and terrorist money laundering. So if you want to wake up your family and friends, teach them about the crimes of HSBC. It's the perfect example of how fascist corporations facilitate the drug trade and fund real terrorists. Meanwhile, the police state apparatus is rolled out in both the UK and the United States under the pretense of preventing the drug trade and terrorism. Guys, the reason I bring that up is because banker-driven fascism seems to be what we're up against worldwide, and HSBC is just the one best example of that, and right behind them is J.P. Morgan. Your thoughts?
Well, they're both custodians of GLD and SLV, right?
That's right, as we've long talked about, and people who have a problem with this paper manipulation story and don't seem to believe it either aren't looking at the quantifiable evidence of it, or they're willfully ignorant, or they're useful shills to the cartel. That's my opinion.
So how confident can you be that the gold and silver that they say they have is there? For SLV, for example, there's no way that could have been accumulated. That the amount of silver they say they have doesn't exist in inventory form. I mean, it couldn't have been bought.
No, that's right.
And then a month or 2 months ago, you had Bob Pisani roll out with a GLD bar that turned out to not even be a GLD bar. Somebody did the forensics and tracked down the.
It was the Swiss Gold ETF. It was Ned Naylor Leland.
Right, the security number that was incorrect. It was somebody else's bar. How in the world did somebody else's bar get out of the vault? That's what I want to know. And you're looking at, that was a 400-ounce bar. I mean, you're looking at $700,000 that walked out of a vault to take pictures of it.
Yeah, I think they're commingling what they have. And, of course, what they have, I mean, the fact that Bob Pisani's in a room full of gold, who knows what room that is and who knows how much gold it is. And, of course, who knows who owns it. It's meaningless. And the best part...
how many own it.
Yeah, and the best part was that wasn't a solicited thing. It wasn't like GLD or whoever was with him said, hey, look at this bar. He just took one and said, look, I got a bar right here. It's gold. It turned out he had the serial number facing the camera by accident, and that's how he came about this. And, I mean, you talk about the bank of the HSBC money laundering thing, which I saw. I mean, money laundering, again, we mentioned Jim Willey. He's been writing about money laundering forever. I put a piece in my rant yesterday, a quote from Jim Willey's newsletter, showing how I think 70% of all the narcotics money coming into the States now comes from Afghanistan now, compared to 6% before the war started. And so, you know, I mean, these banks, whether they do it willingly or not, are involved in every kind of government crime that's going on. And HSBC is just right at the top of this cream of crap.
Well, absolutely. And you guys, the reason I bring up HSBC's criminality is not only because they're the GLD ETF custodian, not only because the crimes of J.P. Morgan are now epic, it's because of the word fascism. It's because of what we now face in this country is banker-driven fascism, which leads me back to a question that one of the SGT Report readers wanted me to ask you, Andy, specifically, which is, with the blatant precious metals manipulation in full view of everyone who's paying attention, will it really ever amount to anything, meaning the powers that be are in control? And as long as that's the case, this talk of $400 silver, which incidentally is James Turk's prediction, somewhere between 2014 and 2016, he says that how will that ever happen when the fascists are in control? This talk of $400 silver and $8,000 gold is all baloney until this paradigm changes, correct?
Well, the word control is the key word in what you're talking about, because look where we were when we were in the age of prosperity, as they call it, which ended in 2000, and look where we are today. We have this real unemployment rate over 20%, not just in the States, but around the world. You have visible evidence. I mean, today I saw the premier of China talked about a severe unemployment issue in China, which is no small issue with 1.5 billion people. It's everywhere now. We're talking about massive unemployment, massive declines in economic activity, social unrest, soaring sovereign bond yields, municipal failures. I mean, you name it across the board. So to say they're in control, because Obama and Mitt Romney and some European guys are still in power, does that mean they're controlling anything? Look, the price of gold has gone from $250 to $2,000, and it's sitting right up near its highs despite all the actions they take. Now, to people who get excited about, when are we ever going to win? Again, there's a difference between money and investment. You hold gold because it's money. If you hold mining shares, that's an investment. That's totally different because you never know what's going to happen with investments. But with gold, it's guaranteed it will keep going up in time against items of real value. And this is not the first time over the 12 years, and Bill can chime in on this, that we've dealt with periods that seem interminably long where these guys were so-called in control until the next leg up.
Yeah, they're in control until they lose control, and the loss of control will be the first time someone does not receive the metal that they paid for. Whether it be Eric Sprott bought $200 million worth of silver, if that doesn't get delivered, or any money manager, any individual, whatever, as soon as somebody does not get their metal, the whole rig is up, and total loss of control ensues.
Yeah, you're right, Bill. That's what Jim Willey's been saying for quite some time, too, is all hell will break loose when there's a COMEX default. It'll be the biggest default in the history of the world in terms of commodities, correct?
Yeah, and I'd also like to mention that all of these forecasts, Alf Fields talking about 4,500 or 10,000, and James Turk talking 400 silver and $8,000 gold, you can't put a number on metal. What is the number that gold or silver will trade at when no one is willing to sell their gold or silver for fiat currency?
Hey guys, thanks for watching part 1. Don't miss part 2. Thanks for watching.